Hi, Linda from Balcony Travel here, and I'm currently on the Seabourn quest doing one of their Antarctica expeditions, and I thought I would start out the video here as we're crossing the Drake. It's always the biggest challenge for people is worrying about the Drake and how rough it will be. But as you can see here, the seas are fairly calm, not too windy, and it's going great. This was the itinerary that we did. We flew into Santiago, and then the ship sailed from San Antonio. We were a week down the coast of Chile, a week in Antarctica, and then a week heading up to Argentina, ending in Buenos Aires. It was so exciting when we got on board and got to our cabin. We found our bright orange Seabourn Antarctica parkas with liners. We had a lovely backpack and even a penguin hat to keep us warm when we were out. The anticipation was sure starting. Our first stop was Puerto Montt, where we enjoyed this magnificent view of the snow-capped volcanic cone on Mount Sorno. Then they had this lovely little lakeside theater that we wandered around, and I thought this half coffee truck was kind of interesting. They were serving the locals. Then we went on to Castro, and we went on this wonderful walking tour and saw the colorful homes that are famous there that are built along the river. After Castro, we had a day at sea, and we're sailing along the Chilean fjords and came across this spectacular glacier that had all of us outside taking pictures. After going through the Strait of Magellan, we landed at Punta Arenas, which is the southernmost tip of Chile, and our guide was showing us on the map here how far south we were. It's famous for Darwin's, there's a replica of the HMS Beagle that we could actually tour through and walk on. It was a beautiful sunny day when we sailed into Ushuaia, and you can see an overview of the harbor here. There was a few other ships in. We did a city tour, and so of course I had to have my token touristic picture taken in the sign. And then we stopped by the square where they have a memorial to the soldiers who died in the war in the Falklands. They don't actually call it that, they call it Malvinas. It's stated everywhere. And then back on board we go for some fun. We then spent 2 days at sea and totally lucked out with the weather. We had lots of great lectures on our sea days, and this one I found interesting. Just shows you the map of how large of an area Antarctica really is. As we got closer, we were given our colored armbands, which would show us what times we would be going out of our landing. We had the green, we were the green group, so we had 9:30 the first time, and then next day maybe 11 or 12:30. It would vary from day to day. This was the boot locker area where we would store our boots and put all our gear on before we headed out onto the Zodiacs for the day. We woke up to this view this morning. It was so exciting to know that we'd finally arrived in Antarctica, and the first of the groups were heading out in the Zodiac to do their landing. Everyone could hardly contain their excitement. It actually looked a bit different than I thought at first because I expected everywhere to be snow, but this one was a sort of a dirt and gravel landing, so it was going to be our first one, and it was much anticipated, and it was worth every bit of it when we got to take our turn and land on shore. Who taught us how to get out of the Zodiacs. You had to swing your legs around and jump into the shore from that way. Made it much easier. This was me jumping up and down once we hit the shore because it was kind of exciting for me. It was my 7th continent, so I was celebrating. After I finished celebrating, this little guy came up to greet me. It was my first close encounter with the penguin. They're so cute. You could watch them literally all day long. So this breed of penguins is called the chin strap penguin. As you can see when I zoom in there, it almost looks like they have a little line right across their chin there, and that's how they get their name. They were fun to watch. Then we saw a couple of fur seals. I guess they wanted to get in the action of being watched. They were duking it out like a couple of brothers would. So we stood there watching them for a little bit. Our next landing was at a place called Deception Island, and it was so different than when we saw the penguins. This was very cold, very snowy, very desolate, mostly just fur seals at this one. But it was an old whaling station from the 1900s. So we wandered over to see the buildings. There's where they stored the containers to store the whale oil, and the buildings which had an active volcano to kind of decimate them. The next day was much warmer when we stopped at Coveville Island, which is an important breeding ground for the Gen 2 penguin. It was probably, there's around 10 to 12,000 of them there, and they're just hilarious to watch. We just couldn't get enough of them, their antics and the way they run to and fro.
Eating food out of the mother's mouth. Can you see that, Patty? The chick was eating food out of its mother's mouth. Now they're chasing each other. You'll see it coming from the now. So the parent only.
Then we started out from the shore here to go sea kayaking. And at first we went through what they call the brash ice. You can see it floating in the water there. And then just look at the scenery. It was just incredible. And then we got out of the ice area and went into sort of the smoother area to paddle around. And we were all trying to get into a group here. It was quite funny because this is our first day learning, so we're all kind of getting in each other's way. This was great. We're going along, and look at that. The penguins are just jumping through the water, giving us a little show. It was so fun. Then we came across this big leopard seal who was having just a lovely nap on a little piece of iceberg. So we all took a turn kind of going around, paddling around him to take some pictures and stuff, and yeah, he never even woke up. And then as we're turning to the side here too, just look at this scenery. It was absolutely spectacular. It was breathtaking. As we headed back in the Zodiacs to the ship, we got to go by these icebergs that had these wonderful reflective colors just showing the blue. We could see the ice below the surface. It made for just some great photos and videos.
And you see the piece of ice just ahead of us. It looks different. It's not that white.
Yeah.
Let's have a closer look.
Well, that was awesome.
No,
That was fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you very much.
Go green!
Green team! Go green! All right! It is so easy being green. Yeah.
Here it goes again.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, right by them. What?
Oh my god!
They're gonna hit the boat.
A humpback or
They're jumping. They're jumping.
two of them?
Two of them.
Yeah.
The two that were
Here it goes. Here it goes.
Oh, that was a good.
Our next landing was at a place called Neko Harbor, and it was this beautiful little cove area, and it was a nice, beautiful sunny day, and we hiked up to the top of the mountain, and you can just see the expansive views that we had looking back on the ship and taking in the whole area. It was just a fabulous day. Back on board, the safety officer held a demonstration on how they inflate the life rafts. They have to do them for safety purposes. And I'm going to do a separate video for that because I have the whole thing kind of popping up and it's quite long, but it was really interesting. Our next kayak adventure was a little different in the fact we didn't board from the shore. We actually boarded from the Zodiacs.
Feel free to go for a little explore while you wait. Just don't go too far away. Stay within maybe 50 meters.
As nervous as we all were to board this way, everything went without a problem, and off we were out to explore. Back on board for a couple of sea days, and the first day we got to enjoy the famous Seabourn Galley market lunch. And this is just a truly great experience. They open up the entire galley, and they have all these stations, and each one sort of shows off their expertise. And of course, everyone goes crazy over the dessert area because it's just so hard to choose what to pick. And you load your plate up, and it's just a really fun time. And the next sea day, we had a great outdoor party. All kinds of food stations, and we don't let a little cold weather deter us. Again, lots of great fun. We arrived in the Falkland Islands and did a little walking tour around Stanley. And as pretty as the place is, we were there really for one thing, and that was to see the king penguins. This was our journey to get there. You have to get there in a Jeep, 4x4s, and the road is pretty rough, up and down, lots of it's barren land, but it's very potholy, and this is sort of the scenery that once we got out of the main area, this is pretty much what we saw the whole time. But again, we were there to see the king penguins, and boy did we ever. And hear them too. Our last port of call brought us to Montevideo, Uruguay, and it was a busy, bustling harbor, but it was a beautiful sunny day, nice and warm that day, so we took a city tour, and we visited this park that had a statue that was recently restored by the artist's grandson, and we went past the soccer stadium where the very first World Cup game was held in July of 1930, and there was a very interesting story about this gate that you will learn if you visit here that they just changed a couple of years ago. We finally arrived into Buenos Aires, our final destination, very early in the morning. We stayed on a couple of days to see the city, just a beautiful city full of architectural wonders in their buildings. They also had a memorial to the fallen soldiers from the Falkland War. And then we toured the Recoleta Cemetery, where the famous Eva Peron grave is, and even the Queen of Denmark was there touring that day on an official visit. And then in the Jewish area, they were having a memorial also to the bombings that had occurred in March of 1992. Even have a piece of the wall there that's still standing to remember them by. Well, we've come to the end of our very quick journey down to Antarctica, and I hope you enjoyed it and that it's inspired you to visit this wonderful part of the world. And I thought I would just end off, when we first started heading down there, we saw these small icebergs that we would take pictures of, and then the medium icebergs. And then when we were heading up, we saw this massive iceberg that was just gorgeous with its blue colors below. So I thought I'd end off with this, and thank you again for watching, and may today be your day to travel.